That's an awful lot.
Thank you, if you ever figured out how to do that.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much.
Griffin, would you like to highlight the changes and the,
Sure.
if you don't mind?
Nope, that'd be great. So yep, as you all see in front of you, we've got the road plan. It's that time of the year where the township needs to be giving staff and then therefore the road commission some guidance on what local road projects they would like to see completed over the next couple years. We do have a road plan that it was 2018 through 2021, and as the supervisor mentioned, when you get to year 4 and 5 of those plans, when they're originally put together, I mean, that's the best guess at the time. We've been very successful. One thing I would like to show, if I can briefly, is we received the up-to-date Pazer maps, which shows the condition of the township's local roads. And I would just like to point out that if you would compare this map to a lot of other townships in the state, Saugatuck Township's roads are actually in fairly good condition. That doesn't mean that there's not improvement that can be made, and through the 2 special voted millages, I think everyone recognizes that this has been a priority for the area, or for the township and the residents in the past. But with that, we obviously have money budgeted to put towards roads over the next couple of years. So what I'm looking for today is guidance on what road projects you would like to see. Staff will then work with the road commission to get work orders, which will then be brought back before the township board for final approval before proceeding with said project. So I'm hoping for tonight more of a discussion, if there's any, about what you all would like to see for 2020 and 2022. I also apologize because I put the new proposed list just in front of you in the last couple days. The proposed for 2020 is very similar to what is in the current road plan, for the exception of it switches out a couple projects that were recommended to wait on, and includes a couple other suggested local subdivision projects from the road commission. So if you look at proposed 2020, the total is actually slightly less than what was included in the road plan for that year. If the township board approves, staff feels comfortable moving this list to the road commission to start working on work orders to be brought back before you. If you look at 2021, there's some more change in 2021, and 2021 needs some more review, and that's where at this point it's more if you have any comments. Also, if approved by the board, I can move these on to the road commission to work more on getting some more information and more estimates that can hopefully help us move forward in that decision-making process. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. What I would show you in the packet is we've got updated Pazer maps, and then we've got the current road plan. But other than that, I'll do the best I can to answer any questions. Yeah, it's in your packet today. Yep.
So that's in the addition.
Yeah, it's in the addition. Yep, I
knew I had
apologize.
All right.
Oh, here it is.
That wasn't completed until just this week.
Yeah.
Griffin, we received 2 letters, one from Roy McAway
Roy.
and one from Alan Mack.
We did.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what their concern is? And
Sure. So I can try to the best of my ability. So what I can tell you is, since I've gotten here, I've received several questions and comments and suggestions about Riverside Drive,
Right.
Dugout Road area. My understanding is there have been several conversations in the past about a variety of different options for that area. Everything from keeping it as a gravel road all the way to replacing some of the infrastructure that's there and widening it and paving it. That is a very broad variety when you talk about different both maintenance and improvement projects in that area. current road plan, it does identify Riverside and Dugout in 2020, but it doesn't say what it's doing. It just says Riverside Drive and Dugout Road west of 66. So, using my best guess, the projected expense there would be for paving. So I've had conversations with the road commission, and to pave that road, we would also need to reconstruct it first. And moving into paving and reconstructing, we're probably going to want to have additional conversations with our partners at Cal Lake and our engineer about utilities. So my recommendation would be we are not ready to move to the point of paving and widening that road. So that leaves us several options. One of the suggestions from the road commission was we could consider asphalt millings, which is a step above gravel road. That's also what's been suggested by several residents. And what that could be is an intermediate step if the township board would then like to consider exploring other options for that road years in the future. It would also be appropriate if you'd like to take that project off the list for now and continue to look into it. But at this point, I think we've been able to do enough that looking at asphalt millings, which is also a significantly less expensive option than obviously completely reconstructing or paving the road.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know if that's helpful. That's the best I know. Again, there's been lots of conversations in that area long before I was here, so that's my understanding as of now.
And if I don't know if you've heard about the big stump that's in the middle of Dugout Road up there that, I mean, how far do we take care of that road?
Sure.
I mean, have we solved that one yet, or?
No, and there's been lots of stories about, a stump in the
How
road
it's out
up
there?
on, yes, and,
Huge.
there are, at a certain point, Dugout Road was abandoned to the township, so it's no longer under the maintenance of the road commission, and those are the details that staff needs to continue.
I don't think it's part of any road plan.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's,
And then we could just.
that's my
Yeah,
understanding.
that would be a
I didn't know how
separate
far
issue
the
for us
project
to,
was gonna go.
for us to explore.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't look at it, but I don't think it's part of the.
Sure, correct.
Are the asphalt millings the same as chip seal? Or is that something
No,
different?
that's
Because that was,
different.
the last I heard, they had talked about that. Okay.
So
So it's
chip
step up?
sealing is a preventative maintenance
Right.
technique used for paved roads.
Okay, okay.
Asphalt millings is,
What was they did out on the Lakeshore Drive?
yes.
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 So it's not the same as like crushed asphalt?
Yeah, and I also want to be careful, I am not a roads expert.
Any of us are?
If the board is comfortable moving forward, I can also try to acquire some more information when I bring work orders back. But my understanding is it's a step above traditional gravel, more towards paving, but not all the way to what you would think of as a paved road.
It sounds like that would just buy us some time for a more permanent solution.
I also think it would be a step up in road condition for the folks on Dugout and Riverside Drive. I think you can see from both these letters and others who have reached out to us that there is a condition problem in that area, and this could be a step, as you said, in the right direction.
And there are people that live there that don't want anything to change.
Correct.
They're okay with the way.
We have heard, yes, we've heard a little bit of everything.
So are these 7 your recommendations, or are these what's in the plan that was last approved?
This is a compiled list of what was in the plan with the recommendations put in. So if you, so it's both.
Yeah, well, a comment I have to make is I know last year we closed our fiscal year. I don't have the number in my head, but we didn't spend anywhere near what was budgeted and approved in roads. That's good. Maybe, unless somebody's suffering. I think we're very well funded on the road side, road millage issue. I mean, in fact, I know we are. And I look at these 7, and it's, 3 of the 7 are my neighborhood. They're within a half a mile of where I live, and I look at these and I don't think, wow, that road's so terrible, I wish it would be improved.
I know, I was thinking the same thing.
And I just want us to be prudent about, you don't always have to spend money because it's budgeted or you raised it. And I'm thinking, and I know this might be a little apples and oranges, but it's a road, but we are on the precipice of a potential crisis with Lakeshore Drive, and this whole issue of having to build a potential emergency road to the east of those homes, where they're gonna lose all access. And like I said, that might be mixing budget buckets, because it's county, there could be state money involved, but my feeling just right now, as we start second quarter is, and just thank you, but I don't see a rush, I don't see any of these as something we need to say, let's move on this right away.
Well, so if
I like the way you're thinking, but let's,
if I can say a couple things.
Sure.
First, if you look at the proposed projects on this list, both for 2020 and 2021,
Yep.
and then look at the corresponding PACER,
Yep, no, I
these
have,
are
yeah.
the roads on the poor side of condition. So I know sometimes it doesn't look like that
I know.
visually. The other piece I would say is road projects have to be planned, I mean, as we're seeing now, 6 months to a year ahead of time. So I know we've got a situation on Lakeshore Drive that isn't going away anytime soon, and we definitely need to be prepared to do what we can. But I would caution the board to not move forward with road projects in other parts of the township as well. If it got to the point for emergencies, that's why we have fund balances in the road fund, which is a healthy fund balance in that fund. And as you said, I think the township would want to look at alternative funding sources.
I don't know that much about asphalt, but I do know there is something too, because our road appeared the same way, and ours was done this year. But there is something to preventive maintenance, you know, so you don't let them crumble and fall apart until they're beyond help. So if they don't look all that bad, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't need to be done. And I'm really happy to see Riverside Drive dug out, and then the road that's split with Manlands, because these people have been in touch with us, at least since I came on board. So those projects I think really need to be done, whatever we need to do for Riverside and dug out. So. I was just,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Would any of these be actually done in 20, these are for next year?
Yes.
This would be, yes,
These
we
are,
would,
okay.
we
I
would be,
figured that, I just wanted to.
if the board would be comfortable with staff moving forward to get work orders for 2020 road projects, the goal would be to bring work orders back in December, so these projects could then be bid out and planned by the road commission and commence next construction season, which is summer of 2020.
Is this current list in any, like a priority order or chronological or just?
It's this year.
No.
No, but I mean the 1 to 7.
Oh.
No. What I would just say is it includes a variety of projects from asphalt millings to resurfacing to preventative maintenance to start roadside mowing and primary road dust control. So it's all of our road projects. And again, the board, for the board's knowledge, we have special revenue road millages that pay for this work.
I do.
No, I know, I acknowledge that, but we don't always spend it all.
Correct.
You did mention.
And I don't want to spend it just to spend it.
You did mention the dust control, and I know that was also an issue, if I remember correctly, on Riverside. Dust control measures and how far they can actually take the truck to do that. So
Sure.
This is I think, a great idea, the millings.
Well, I would be willing to make a motion to approve the 2020 road plan amendment as submitted.
I'm willing to second that.
Any discussion? None? All those in favor?
When they say roadside mowing, that's not like a guardrail thing or any of that, okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
rather see this list presented to us in a potential priority order. Again, I'm not completely on board with number 1 on here, and I know it takes time to bid and get the work in motion for next summer, but personally, I'd rather get more information and review this.
Well, we will get more information when we get the work orders, and we can't get the work orders until we approve this list.
I'm not convinced we need all the work orders, so I'm sorry.
But at that point, can't we not approve?
Yeah.
The work orders? Yep.
Or ask for them then. That's all.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Jay?
Motion carries. Now I lost my agenda. Zoning ordinance amendment. Renee Wells, our zoning administrator, did go through the zoning ordinance and found some sections that were in conflict with other sections. And that's pretty common when you get a new zoning administrator. Hasn't been a new zoning administrator recently. And she's taken some planning commission some corrections and fixes and presented them to the planning commission. The planning commission did approve those changes. And the planning commission is an advisory board. They can't make changes. Only the city or the township board can make those changes. Does anybody have any questions about any specific section? Other questions about the ordinances? No? Okay.
I can just make a comment, it's the ordinance number 2019/10.
And next is last time. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2019-10 as presented, which is an ordinance to amend section 40-65-8, B2, 40-65-8, E, 40-663, C, and 40-185C.
There's support.
I'll support.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to comment, because I had a little summary for my planning commission report, but of course we're voting on this now. I want to point out, I mean, most of these, you've got them here, the private roads, passing lanes, two-dimensional standards, were either inconsistencies or things that weren't clear, like there was something about, nope, this applies to 4 or more properties, and then 3 or less, and it left a gap in the middle. The only one that I feel I just want to point out that is kind of different than how we've been doing things is the site plan review, section 40-812B, because we have historically, with any site plan review, been noticing properties within 300 feet, which other townships don't do. It's labor intensive, it's a lot of work, and I can vouch for the fact that 20 to 40%, depending on the neighborhood, of them come back undeliverable, because they're sent to a house that may not be where the owner lives. And this would just take that away so that only properties adjacent to the site are notified. And again, and this is really important before anyone, it's only to projects that are fully legal. So it's not an SAU, a special use amendment. That would still apply to the 300 foot. This is just if your neighbor wants to do something that doesn't require going to the ZBA or getting a rezoning or a variance, just something that it's already allowed. So let's just narrow how much noticing. I just thought you might want to know that.
I believe it's just commercial property.
Thank you, I phrased which makes it even more limited in scope, but pure. Thank you, Andy.
So we have a motion and a support. Any more discussion? Okay, this is, yep, this is roll call. Aldrich.
Yes.
Bigford.
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes.
Marcy.
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries. The premium conversion plan looks very complicated,
Got a great name.
but it's really not that complicated. What it does is, for $175 paid by the township, allows the money that gets deposited into employee health savings accounts, let that be taken out pre-tax. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what I understood you to say.
Yeah, if I can, it is a really, complicated looking plan that the township has for two primary reasons, one of which directly applies and one of them which doesn't currently. But, because of IRS regulations, we have this plan to allow employees to pay for healthcare premiums pre-tax, where currently the township pays for all employee healthcare premiums, so that does not directly apply. But as the supervisor mentioned, it also allows the township to contribute to employee HSAs pre-tax.
And is that what we've been doing, or would this change?
Yes.
This is just codifying what the board has approved in the past and the current board.
Correct. This would not change anything. It's a restatement of a plan that's been in place for the township since 2010. The reason that I'm bringing it before you is staff cannot find any record of it going before the board in the past. Again, that doesn't mean it didn't. It's more of, I would just rather be safe, and because we're not able to find that, I would like to bring it before all of you. I also think it's helpful for the township board to start understanding even some of the nuances of what we do and what people, I don't think about on a day-to-day basis. But I do apologize because it turns out to be a large packet and seems to be rather complicated. But if it makes any of you more comfortable, I've also reached out to Lighthouse Group, who's the township's insurance advisor, and they recommend that the policy be restated. So, again, I'm comfortable moving forward and reinstating the plan. It doesn't increase the cost. It doesn't change anything. More than anything, this is just one of those I'd rather be safe and bring this before you all.
We appreciate that. And then just so as a reminder, this board, we did specifically vote on the mechanism to budget for that this year. It's just there was no initial discovery of previous boards instituting it. Right?
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the adoption of the Certificate of Corporate Resolution, which restates the township's premium conversion plan effective September 1, 2019, as provided by Flex Administrators.
There's support.
I'll support.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Now we have before us a request to repurchase two cemetery grave plots. I think the proposal is to follow our past practices in doing this. I know we've done it before. I wasn't on this side of the table, I was on the other side of the table. But, it's just a repurchase. Any questions or comments? Motion?
I move to approve the repurchase of two cemetery grave plots from William and Linda Peterson in the amount of $120 per grave plot, which totals a cost of $240.
Support?
I'll support that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. ACH and post-audit policy. Another one that looks pretty complicated, but really, I will leave to the subject matter experts on that. if you could just give us a brief.
Sure. The brief version is the township board adopted a financial policy handbook at the October 2nd township board meeting. At that time, I mentioned to you all that there were some additional policies that were recommended to be added over time through the review of both our legal counsel and our auditors. These are two of those policies that were recommended to be added. Like all of the real policy work we've been doing over the past 5 months, the goal of these policies is not to drastically change our current practices, but instead to document the current baseline. So the treasurer, which he can speak if he has comments, and our deputy clerk, who these would be impacting most directly, have both had a chance to look at these. The first one specifically is required by statute, which is why I more put the rush on getting this back before you. But these are two things we've been doing in the past that staff believes would be helpful to have documented policies. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Motion?
Let me just comment first, make sure everyone understands currently how this operation works, because I think it's consistent, and again, I thank you for, putting this in policy like this. Right now, any ACH, which is an automated bank transfer, anything to do with payroll, taxes, and benefits is initiated by the deputy clerk. Any ACH relative to tax money disbursements, whether it's Pelican County, the fire department, library, and those are initiated by the treasurer, and that's me. Some of our disbursement partners actually still prefer a check, but that's who this affects, as you've already said. Some of them are things the deputy clerk does, some of the things that I do, and then we both see, for example, when I do mine through, another example is when we pay ourselves for light districts and taxes owed to the township, because we have two different accounts at Chemical Bank, that's an ETF, an electronic transfer between accounts. But I give my copy of that to Lori, so we have a cross-check system in place. So this isn't anything major, but that's how ACH has helped us conduct our business.
Thanks for that. Would you like a motion?
I would.
I move to approve the adoption of the proposed ACH and post-audit policies as presented and direct the township manager to add them to the financial policy handbook.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And we're moving on to the November 2019 budget amendment. And those are 3 different budget amendments. The first one is probably the most pressing one. And we can take action on that one. We can do them all separately, or we can do them together. Do we let Griffin explain them first?
Sure, and just to be brief, and then I'll answer any questions I can. The first one, as you mentioned, that's directly related to the board action that was that occurred on October 2nd in relationship to the Harbor grant resolution that was passed. So the $5,000, we've received the invoice from Allegan County, but because that Harbor grant support was not initially budgeted, that's why a budget amendment is coming before you all today. The other 2 are a little different. These are situations that staff's been keeping an eye on. We consistently review our budget to actual statements, and something that we've been finding is we're running over, not to the point of creating overages because we are early enough in the fiscal year, but when you track the percentages, these are overshooting. One of them is in our health insurance line. The other one is in one of our salary lines. So to the best of our knowledge, these are the situation we're in now. If the township board would like more information on these or would like to wait, that would be appropriate. But I also wanted to put them in front of you now if that's something you one, to make you aware, but two, if you would be comfortable addressing that now. As the year goes on, there will obviously be more amendments as we're all getting used to this current budget we're operating in. And if we find moving forward that we then have more money, we can always make an amendment back. But I will do my best to answer any questions you have.
Well, I thank you for pointing these out this early. I wanted to comment because all three of these were specific, well, two of these were specific items we actually talked a lot about in our tax meeting, our budget and meetings and hearings. The first one, the grant, you're right, it's not all budgeted. About half of it is in the budget, so this tweak would not be necessarily for the full $5,000. There is $2,400 in the Harbor Authority budget line. I know some of it might be used for buoys, but we haven't been billed yet. Just wanted to point that out. So it may not be the entire amount. The HSA payments, we think some of it actually is it's not pegged as that, but it's in the greater health benefit line. But that, it could run over, so again, thanks for pointing that out. Cemetery sexton, that was discussed by the board not only in the budget, but prior to that. And we don't have to get into the details, but some of that has to do with the transfer fund balances that were implemented by previous boards and where that money went. It kind of went into a different employee salary. We didn't correct that when we approved appointing Lori as the sexton. Is that right? Do you agree with that? Okay. I know, I just want to point that out. Those aren't new issues, but they're probably fixes we should make, so thank you.
No, and I definitely don't bring, asking for X amount of money from our fund balance lightly, but at this point, I think we've all discussed as, you all as a board and myself as staff has discussed in the past, we're all new operating with this budget, and this is a year of evaluation, and it's been a year of change, so there are going to be situations like this, and I bring these to you all hopefully as soon as I know about them, so we can all discuss how you are most comfortable addressing them.
Well, I'd be happy to move to approve the requested November 2019 budget amendments as presented.
I'll support that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We're on to committee reports. Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission met on October 28th. We actually had a pre-official meeting presentation that evening from Ryan Kilpatrick, who some of you may remember for when he worked for the city of Douglas. He's now with an organization called Housing Next. We invited him to talk to the commission about this kind of a new notion that's out there about allowing communities to allow for houses being built that are smaller than their ordinances may allow. Particularly in light of the fact that these smaller homes have tended to be very popular with millennials and boomers, both ends of the spectrum. So Ryan did a trade presentation, I thought, it was very well received, on homes that average about 800 square feet, which is 200 or 300 feet or not more. It's less than our ordinance now allows on the land. He did point out, and this is Ottawa County, not Allegan, but we're next to each other, a startling fact I think we all found was that it's just over 70% of households in all of Ottawa County do not have children living at home. And again, that's millennials and boomers. So it was like, I think 24% are more of a traditional family with kids in the house. And that's probably going to stay that way or increase. So the Planning Commission welcomed him, and I think we will be taking steps to consider this more, and maybe involving zoning administrator Wells in looking at, should we allow some changes to our minimum size relative to this issue. Then we went into official meeting. Things we approved, a woodworking boat A woodworking and boat restoration studio on Gleason Road near Old Allegan was approved, and I believe construction's already begun. We did table an SAU special use and site review for the medical marijuana provisioning center at Blue Star and 64th Street. That's the one sideways to spectators. We felt we needed more further detail on both the site plan itself, some particulars, as well as full addressing of the conditions that we had previously put on them. So they will be returning to the Planning Commission. Another special use request was passed and site review, and this is for a medical marijuana growth facility on Just Barnes Drive, which is property. It's north of the southern 196 interchange, kind of across the hardware and lumber store. That was approved. As we just voted to accept, approval was given to those 5 edits for clarity that Renee had made to different zoning ordinances. No more detail on that. Just to be aware, the next meeting of the Planning Commission is Monday, November 25th, 7 p.m. Important to point out, this will include a public comment section, not a public hearing, but public comment section on the issue of recreational marijuana. Just to remind everyone, as of now, the Planning Commission has voted to opt out of medical marijuana. The laws...
Medical?
I meant recreational.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Opted out. We're into medical. One reason was waiting for the state laws to come down, which start December 1st. Those are out there. I just want to kind of ask and throw out to the board, because we've done this in the past, we sometimes encourage or ask the Planning Commission to delve further into something, or ask the zoning administrator to do this. So I'm wondering if prior to the month of November 25th, do we want to ask them to put this higher on the radar, to consider possibly opting into recreational? I do know our zoning administrator, Lene Wells, would be able and willing to perhaps redline our current medical ordinance to show what would have to change for recreational, and she would do this in tandem with our legal counsel. And again, I just bring that up. We could wait until after the meeting, or it's just something to
I have
be
a
aware of.
question.
Yes.
Is there a reason that it's a public comment and not a public hearing?
Yes, because it's not on an
It's not
ordinance.
published?
It's not on an application for something or an ordinance or any change. It's part of a regular meeting, encouraging people to come and comment.
Okay, thank you.
No, I had the same question.
So, tell me again, what was your suggestion, that we have a meeting before the November 25th meeting?
No, I'm asking, do we want to communicate to the Planning Commission and or Lene to do a little bit more before
Yes,
this?
absolutely.
Yes.
And if so,
Yes.
what? Or as I said, we can wait and hear how the meeting goes.
I have construction going on, and I've had a lot of comments about what are we doing, when's this gonna happen, and, you know, people who, constituents who want us to opt in. So I'd like to hear more.
I think that, John is right, though. We should direct our staff to get that prepared so it can be on the next meeting, at the public hearing.
Okay.
Because one thing I want to point out, and I think we all know this, but it bears repeating, the law as I understand it, for the next 2 years, the only entity, person, or company that could apply to be recreational is an existing medical,
Right.
which by definition limits, we have 2 approved.
Right.
So that would be it. And then we could, if we ask Lene to look at this, if we keep the same zoning restrictions that we've kept on growth and provisioning for medical, it's kind of one of the same. It by nature would limit. It's not an open free-for-all, any business, anyone along Blue Star Highway.
Aaron Smith from Muskegon, has extended an invitation to Planning Commission or Township Board members to go look at his facility to give you an idea what, marijuana facility center looks like, and, you know, and I think it's a good thing to see, because it's surprising the security and how professional it's run, and
anybody who wants to go see that, contact Brenda or Stacy to make arrangements for a field trip.
Field trip. Very good.
Road Commission?
Can I ask a question? John, thank you for your comprehensive and detailed report, very helpful. The smaller homes presentation, I'm just really excited about it. It's green, it's affordable, it would be an amazing addition in my estimation to our township. Did you mention, I think when we had just briefly discussed it, is Ryan Kilpatrick or someone else with his group willing to come and present to our board? Okay.
I did mention that to you, and I did ask him.
Okay.
He is willing to come back and make some similar or different kind of presentation to all of us.
Okay.
He was also at the Economic Development Conference that we attended, as were some potential funders that I was able to meet and had heard of Ryan but hadn't met him, so hoping there could be some synergy there. Because again, my view, bigger picture, unlike the two cities, we still have a lot of open land in the township. And we could be right for something like this, which could be...
Are these tiny homes like in a little grouping too? I mean, that wouldn't have...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not...
I mean, okay.
And again, as he pointed out,
Okay.
I'm learning more, because we all keep saying tiny homes.
They're
Tiny
really
homes
not,
are 400 feet.
Yeah, 400 are much
And there are tiny home projects in Detroit and that, but he's focusing on what we're calling smaller homes.
more
which are
affordable, yeah.
800.
Yeah.
A lot more space, but
Yes.
less than the average home.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, but are we going to communicate to Lene then that we want? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I did.
Yeah, if you all would like to see that happen, I would encourage a motion to direct staff to whatever it is you are looking for.
Oh, want to look at it.
I'll move to, so is it to have him come in?
Those
No, I'm sorry, we're going,
Okay.
which one are you
Yeah,
supposed
that's,
to?
I'm sorry.
So much
Yeah,
Renee or Ryan?
I jumped back.
You want-
If you're, so you all were talking about asking Lene and legal counsel and staff to put together a recommendation. I would clarify, are you looking for a recommendation to the planning commission? Are you looking for a recommendation to the township board? And regardless, it would be helpful for the board to make a motion to direct staff in that direction.
Are you talking marijuana or tiny homes?
Yes.
Yes.
I prefer
You're asking
that
a lot.
to marijuana.
All right.
Oh,
I think,
my
all right, let me
goodness,
take
okay.
a stab.
Somebody else make a
Let me
motion.
take a stab.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
I'd like to make a motion that the board instruct staff, including manager and zoning administrator, to work collaboratively with legal counsel prior to the November 25th Planning Commission meeting to present options relative to opting in to opting into recreational marijuana, including presenting a red line version of our existing medical marijuana ordinance for further study of what said action would mean.
Good job.
Yeah, is that right?
Second that.
Any more discussion about marijuana's direction? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And
Do
we
we,
want
I don't think we
direct-
need a motion to invite Ryan to come to the
No.
planning
That's
commission,
got
to our,
I can try to coordinate that.
yeah, not either, anyone. Good.
Okay, road commission.
Well, we've covered a lot of roads tonight. Again, I'm happy to see some of those orders that, on that list that people have been calling us about. And just to let everyone know, we are really concerned about Lakeshore Drive and what's going on down there. I was down there, a group was down there. I don't know if that falls under roads or not, but it is a road. So I just wanted to say that we are very concerned about that and working on some type of plans to resolve that issue. Hopefully, or figuring out how.
I think we're gonna hear more about that later, right?
Oh, is that your report? Okay, then I'm done.
I don't know if we're on roads a minute, I saw on the news the other day that Holland has created a machine, have you seen this? That goes under guardrails and cuts the grass under the guardrail, and I was wondering if anyone would be interested in contacting them and seeing what this is over the Roundup issue.
Right.
So, I'm kinda interested in it to see what it is, and maybe that might be a way around that Roundup.
Well, let's see if
I mean,
our road commission knows of this
yeah.
equipment.
Well, I didn't know if how to do that. I mean, do you wanna,
Has to go through the road.
commission, okay.
Yeah. Someone should identify who the company in Holland is.
I think it's a road commission. I don't know. I just kinda caught the tail end. Did anyone else see that or not?
It's just a matter of.
You
The
did see
Ottawa
that?
County Road Commission
Okay. Oh.
formatted their own piece of equipment to clean out sediment from under guardrails, so.
Is it mow it down too and all that?
I don't know if it's vegetation mowing, it's more cleaning sediment out, but
Alright. It just,
you
kind
can
of
just
was
ask the
interesting
Allegheny
that
County
the
Road
whole
Commission to
Roundup
talk to them
thing.
about it.
okay, alright. I'll just myself call them and ask them about it. Okay.
Make sure you know that our county knows about it. That's cool, potentially.
Okay, report from the interurban was submitted by Lori Babinski. They had their election of officers, and they all stayed the same for the fiscal year 2019. Chairperson Drew Cullen, Vice Chairperson Kathy Johnson, Treasurer Lori Babinski, Secretary Marie Muha. Meeting date stayed the same as well, the third Tuesday at 5 p.m. They ended the fiscal year with 70,079 passengers, up 4,496 passengers, the first time over 70,000. Dispatch software is in process, and parts of the process are working well most of the time. There have been some problems with the tablets and communications, which they are working through, and that's submitted by Lori Babinski. I hope you don't have any questions. Fire board.
Last month was above average with a total of 81 calls, an increase of 3.4% from last year. October was back to normal for fire calls, only 2. EMS counted for 35% of our calls, which is below average. Friday and Saturday are the busiest day. The township, again, has the most calls, 301 compared to 225 to 229 in the cities. Response times remain steady with a 5-minute, 38-second for 30 priority 1 and 2 calls. And we've been getting feedback from AMR again, and they fall between 12 to 13 minutes for priority 1 and 2 calls.
Parks Commission.
I'll stand up here. We spoke about it at the committee for the Blue Star Trail, and I think it would be beneficial for either myself or Dana to be included in that, because we do have the experience with our existing trail. And the other thing I would like to mention, this item or the issue of maintenance, it keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And when you take a number, like you mentioned, 10,000, and if you multiply that by an inflation factor, and you say most of our expenses would be not in year 1 or 2, but in year 18, 19, and 20, you can come up with a pretty big number. And because the way we budget in the general fund, we can't create a sinking fund and every year put aside $5,000 or whatever the number is to carry forward for that big expense in the future. So we don't want a $100,000 bill in year 20, whatever. So we do need to think about, and maybe working with the Blue Star Trail folks, how we could manage that. Because if we look too far in the future, we become afraid to do anything. We can't afford to spend $1 million to replace a trail in 2025. So we need some creative, and maybe Griffin can delve into the financial aspects of that. As far as the park, so I request that one of us be included in that committee. two items. It looks like the sidewalk will be delayed until next year. We've had a quick turn to cold weather and so on and so forth. The other thing we have not done, and you have brought it up about the walk. It might be beneficial as the leaves fall off the trees. We go up on the high ground at River Bluff, and we can include, and I can work with either you or Griffin, and plan maybe a walk where we could go through River Bluff, look at the trails that are there, look at some places where we could build some trails, see some of the really nice views that we could create some overlook spots. So I'll try and, when we get a, break in the weather, if we get some warm weather closer to Thanksgiving, maybe we can come up with a plan to do that yet this year.
Yeah.
So we haven't forgotten about that, we'd just like to do it.
Including the dog park as well,
Yeah,
if there's
we could do that,
improvements,
yeah. We could just
big pictures looking with.
That'd be very
we
cool.
could collect some.
We could skip Sunset Park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right now.
Thanks, Jim. Kalamazoo Lake Water and Sewer Authority. Cal Lake.
The, water's good. We have completed, approval of an investment policy in the last, 4 weeks. The copper and lead testing that's required by the state and by the federal government was completed September 30th. I looked at it, looks good. We are nowhere near exceeding any limits, but the state reviews it, and without getting too deep in the weeds. Darrell wasn't aware of this, but the state reviews it and probably calculates something called the LSI, which is the Landular Saturation Index, and hopefully they then decide that Flint can't happen here. They look at other things, pH, calcium alkalinity, temperature, and dissolved solids. There was an excursion, which I was asked about yesterday, for Marcy in Douglas in the last 8 weeks. Kind of a scary one when people were informed. There was a business on Enterprise Drive that was pumping out a whole bunch of several thousand gallons of ugly-looking white foamy water out of the back of the building, and they sent pictures to Darrell and to me. We had a basic discussion. It appears that there was a contract business there that was metal plating or doing metal finishing, which is a regulated industry in the United States, and they were doing it as a batch, so they weren't really saying that they were a business doing ongoing plating. It was just, we're filling in for somebody that was doing business with Howmet, I believe, across the street, and Douglas immediately acted. The sheriff was called. Douglas issued a cease and desist letter within a few days. I looked at the pictures and said, that looks like coolant. It's hard to tell if that is a hazardous waste, but by the very definition of plating, they were breaking the law. The DEQ came in, and within a week, the person that was operating the business had the landlord screaming at them, and they threw up their hands and said, we're done, we're moving out of here. So they could be operating out of a barn outside Holland.
Or they could be in the township now.
Hopefully, we'll be aware if somebody starts dumping several thousand gallons.
It's nice to hear the swift response.
Yeah, it was pretty immediate. It was pretty obvious. The landlord that owned the building didn't want any part of it. And it did look like coolant. That may or may not be dangerous, but
could have been PFAS.
it could have been. To me, it looked like coolant, which is just a product they use in metal finishing to keep the machinery cold. But it still, by definition, was breaking the law. So that was dealt with and moved forward. I think I said the first time I got up here that there does not seem to be a meeting of the minds in our group between the three communities. The communities of Saugatuck and Douglas, Barry representing Saugatuck and Bill LaFever representing Douglas, have been tasked to make some suggestions on the bylaws for Cal Lake. It has become less of an issue now that Douglas's position has been somewhat dismissed by the state. A number of communities in the state said, we are not going to be paying for replacing all the copper and galvanized and lead piping. It's just going to be too onerous. It's not our responsibility, and that's kind of what Bill's position was as far as I understood it. But court now has ruled that a number of these cities in Michigan can't say that. It is not they called it an unfunded mandate, and the decision was made, I think, 4 weeks ago that the court said, no, you've decided to supply water, so you're responsible for the infrastructure and this looming. I heard you say expenses on the trail are a pittance compared to what we will be facing in the next 10 years replacing galvanized and lead piping in this country. I thought I heard $900 billion for Chicago alone. So all those audits are ongoing for the 3 communities. We're in very good shape.
What's, how's the 135th upgrade doing with that?
They seem to be back
Yeah, I
at it
just wondered,
today
I
after
saw
it looked
people
like it
down
was
there,
done.
Ben, do you know anything about that?
The
Upgrade
The
from the
water
eight
main change going up, to the warehouses.
to the north,
haven't heard anything.
haven't
about
heard
it.
Do you know? I'm sorry.
I know there are a number of issues ongoing with
But
respect.
the whole crew is back out.
I saw that, that's why I was
It was done
curious.
last week, I just didn't.
Again, that could just be delays in the crews. I know it's at least nearing completion because they've begun discussion with the township to the point of wanting their payment for the extension aspects of that with the water oversizing agreement the township board adopted back in the summer. So I don't know specifically what you're referring to about crews being back out there, but as far as I was aware, they were nearing completion and more in the inspection and then turnover phase.
Griffin, you want 20 seconds on that?
Sure.
Yes.
So the mainline water main has been built and tested, and it's passed all the pressure and bacteria testing for the mainline portion. They have to come back and tap the services, which is one of the last things they have to do. So they were there, and then they left for a little bit, now they have to come back and run service lines and curb boxes.
okay, thanks.
They're very close to being 100%.
You had asked, the last time I was here, you asked about the master meter program. Darrell has an inventory of meters for at least a year, and we have approved expansion of bidding. There seems to be, at least in my opinion, this tendency to use one supplier over and over and over again. The company that was supplying the meters is got him kind of handcuffed, but there are other companies that can do just as good a job and do it for less money. So we have approved him looking at other suppliers. But for the time being, he had an inventory of at least a year. It's entirely possible it's 2 years inventory, so he's in good shape.
To that point, do you or do any of us know, I mean, for example, does the Cal Lake Authority, do they operate the way governments have to, with certain procurement rules on?
We have to approve every expenditure, and we hear it, that's
The board,
part
you
of
the board.
We go through every expenditure and approve it.
But even to the point of
Even the emergency, but
who the
generally,
vendor is, and if they.
yes, the vendor's listed on that sheet that we approve. And we generally don't look at things that are less than $1,000, but that's coming up more and more because I saw some things in terms of expenses that looked a little unusual based on my experience.
Good.
So,
Keep doing that, please.
so water's good.
Thank you. Emergency Services Committee. We have that.
Tony's not here.
They meet quarterly.
Oh,
I don't think they.
No, you're right, they are quarterly. That's a note for the.
Okay, open board report.